The first adaptation I did was a movie called Machine Gun McCain.
Yes.
With John Cassavetes, Britt Eklund, Edward G. Robinson. And I needed to get $20,000 to bring Pacino, the actors from The Indian Watch the Bronx, to Spoleto. We were invited to the festival. And Cassavetes and Peter Falk and Jenna Roll, they were trying to get money to do Husbands. I was paid $20,000 in cash in a paper bag in Rome, in Italy. And so everybody was there for the wrong reason. And the movie is like, it was just a screening of it when it's like a cult movie in Italy. It was just absolutely ridiculous. But within weeks of doing that, I read the Strawberry Statement, and I just really wanted to do that. I thought this would be a great movie. I was 27 years old. It was a very political time during the 60s. It was about the Columbia strikes. I was living in the neighborhood. And it was I who approached a movie producer and said, would there be any interest in this? And so that was, you know, that's a context for adaptation. I was just thinking how much adaptation I've done in my life. It's really, I don't think of myself as somebody who's done that much, but it's just tons and tons and tons. I did a film called Sunshine a couple of years ago. It was with Ralph Fiennes, and Istvan Szabo directed it. And my agent called me from London, and she said, I have a really interesting project. I think you'll be really great for this project. Istvan Szabo, and I didn't know his work at all. And she said, well, how can you not know his work? And I said, I'm sorry, I've been busy. And so I looked at Mephisto, and I didn't really love it. And then I saw a film called Colonel Radel. And I don't know if any of you have seen it, but you should make a note and rent this film. It's astonishing. I said, yeah, I'd love to work with Szabo. I think it'd be a great honor. And what came to me was about an 800-page miniseries that he had written for television that was way too expensive for television, didn't get made, and the film company wanted to do a feature film based on it. So I took all of this work, and the agent had said to me, this will be 6 months. It took 3 years. I'm glad I did it because I think it's a great film. I think it's a really beautiful film, but it was an astonishing amount of work because all 800 pages had enormous meaning to Istvan Szabo. They were torn from his life and his life story. So I really had to not only boil down the story and find something that had its own dramatic life, but I also had to deal with him and convince him that could be cut, that could be cut and made into 3 other movies.
Did you have that same experience with James Dean?
That was much easier, though. That was 7 years from the time I started writing that until the time I saw it on screen. And I mean, it was written as a feature film for Warner Brothers, and we couldn't find a bankable star who wanted to play James Dean, would take the risk of playing. And that was sort of understandable. We screen tested DiCaprio in a bodysuit. He was so young and he looked like a kid in a bodysuit. The danger of working on an adaptation with a studio is that one of the first conversations you have is, this is a good Brad Pitt vehicle, and you go, then you're dealing with the character in the novel, and you're dealing with what Brad Pitt, and they're not the same. And eventually, rather than not do it at all, we did it, Warner Brothers owned TNT, and we did it for TNT, and I worked on it with Mark Rydell, and we agreed to use only actors from the Actors Studio, and did a search, and we agreed that if we didn't find a really great kid to play the part, we just wouldn't do the movie, and we found James Franco, and that was his first film. That was pretty easy because it was a short life, and everybody knew the ending, so we knew that you know, we've all seen like films about Babe Ruth, and we know Babe Ruth can hit a home run, so that's not enough for the movie. So I knew that the end of James Dean's life wouldn't be enough for the movie, and I did a hell of a lot of research, and I found a father-son relationship that I thought would sustain a movie even if it weren't about James Dean. So I've done a Dickens adaptation of a Dickens story, of a Ring Lardner story. When you're working with a short story, there's a structure that's there, and you can kind of get your arms around it very quickly. I can tell you, when you look at 800 pages and somebody's going to make a movie out of this, you just wonder why you said yes. It's terrible. Adaptation, actors, there are really wonderful actors who are transformational actors. It's a special skill that they have, where they can be lots of different characters in the same film or the same play. And then there are actors who just do what they do. And one's not better than the other, it's just a fact of life. I think writers who are particularly good at adaptation are, in a sense, transformational writers, where you really have to be able to imitate the voice of, I mean, if you're going to be faithful to the work, you have to really be able to imitate the voice of the writer. When I did Dickens, it was really great fun to write like Dickens. And of course I failed to write like Dickens, but I tried. With adaptation, there's this constant feeling of betrayal, you know, when you start inventing stuff that isn't in the book or isn't in the play.
Well, that's a good question. How responsible do we feel to the original material, source material, to the original writer when you're doing the adaptation?
I think initially very responsible, and then that kind of grows less and less as reality sets in. I'm adapting a play of mine, and I'm finding it really, really difficult because I'm too faithful to the goddamn play. I can't seem to let it go, you know. And so that's real. I mean, somehow I've got to get some schizophrenic distance, you know, and pretend I didn't write the play. And a lot of times a screenwriter will work on adaptation because he or she has been hired to work on adaptation, so that a film studio has already decided that this would be a film. So then there's the other side of the coin, where you find something that you really love and you set out to adapt it and to talk somebody into doing it. Quite really different circumstance, really seriously different circumstance. Well, I think we start out as writers with the idea that what interests the public isn't necessarily in the best public interest. And film studios definitely don't think that way. They want to know what interests the public, full stop. Some novels are character-driven, and some novels are action-driven. And I think that as 5 individuals, we're attracted to a certain kind of a novel or source material.
Well, that's what
I would be hopeless writing a really big action-driven Hollywood movie. I'd just be hopeless. I mean, think of how different the movies are that you love. You know, how many movies you love, that's why you're in the room, and how different they are. I watched 400 Blows the night before last, and I watched Happy Gilmore last night, and I liked them both. That's the joyous end of the spectrum. The other end is, who do I have to sleep with to get out of this movie?